All right, guys, want to thank everyone for coming today. At Warren Roofing, every year we try to have this annual safety meeting, but really what we're trying to do is build a culture about safety. And once a year we try to have a meeting to discuss it, but we're doing daily safety checks, we're doing weekly toolbox talks, we're doing CERTA training, we're doing asbestos training, we're doing the OSHA training. Throughout the year, there's all these different trainings we're doing, but this is our opportunity to get together and have some more feedback. Where at some of these trainings, whether they're at the Union Hall or they're in-house, we don't always get to have the same interaction. So we really do want to get some interaction today and get some questions from you guys. For those of you that don't know me, my name's Trevor Koss. I'm the president of Warren Roofing. Why is safety important? There's a lot of costs associated with there's an accident, and some of them are obvious and some of them are a little less obvious. But the main one is the personal cost that we pay. Getting hurt, there's pain. There's the inability maybe to go collect a paycheck and work. There's the family cost. You may not be able to do some of the activities around the house that normally your family depends on. Shoveling the driveway, taking out the garbage, collecting the paycheck. These things are true whether you get hurt at work or you get hurt at home. I like to talk about my 4-year-old son and the safety culture. So, if we're here all day talking about safety, but we go home and we leave our safety practices at work and don't take them home with us, we haven't really developed a culture. And what we really want is that culture to not just be at work, but at home. Because, again, whether you're hurt at home or you're hurt at work, the same impact occurs to you personally as well as to the company. So my 4-year-old, whenever we're doing a project, we were just doing a job, my dad, my 4-year-old and I, chainsawing and clearing some land. And he's walking around making sure everyone's got their ear protection, their eye protection, their gloves, the high-vis jackets on. So that my 4-year-old son is programmed already to be thinking about safety and be asking questions because he's seeing me doing it at home and he's picking up on it. They're also on YouTube all the time watching these videos of how to use a bobcat and how to execute whatever safely. And so we may take it for granted because we hear it all the time, but it may be the young guy on the crew that's reminding us about safety because they haven't been in the trades for 20, 30 years and maybe become numb to some of the things that they see around them. Maybe it's because they just went through a class and they heard something and it stuck with them. And it may be the veteran that's been on the roof for a long time that sees the young guy exposed to a hazard that the young person just isn't aware enough to recognize. So, we always need to be looking out not just for ourselves but the people around us. It's also important to realize that the other trades around us are changing the environment we're working in. It's not just us in a static environment doing roofing. We're on new construction jobs, we're on jobs with other trades, and so it is an evolving target, and we need to be conscious and cognizant about looking out for what's changed and how we need to adapt to maintain safety. So, continue with the costs. There's the company cost. We lose money. We have to pay workman's comp more when we have accidents. We have to pay higher insurance rates when we have accidents, making us less competitive. Potentially, an accident was the kind of thing that's going to put us out of business. The customer cost. A lot of our clients are analyzing us, not just on our bid and what it costs for us to do the job, but the value proposition. What do we bring to the table? And safety is very much part of that value proposition. We're not working for people that don't value quality workmanship. We're not working for people that don't value safety in the workplace. We're working for best-in-class clients like Ford, GM, Middle, Higley, Turner. These people expect more from us than just being a cheap bidder. And safety is a huge part of that. So when we have an accident, there's that cost with our client. We're working at Marathon right now, and about 8 years ago, we were low bid on $1 million+ job at Marathon. They actually told us thanks but no thanks because our safety metrics was too high. And they didn't want a partner like us on their job. And now, about 8 years later, we are working for them. But it shows, over time, we're able to correct some of these things and become a safer company. Once you have an accident history, the momentum goes in the other direction. So it's not like you can say, hey, man, we had a really good year. We can sit back and rest on that. No, it's a constant thing. It's not what we did yesterday. It's what are we doing tomorrow? What are we doing to be better? What are we doing to be safer? So there's a huge cost with our clients. Safety, I like to talk about the death spiral. We've seen this with some of our competitors. You have an accident, you're less competitive, you got more costs associated doing the job. So you're getting less work. You have less work, which means you have less ability to cover your overhead. You have less ability to cover your overhead, so your margins are getting smaller. So all these things are causing this downward spiral that ultimately puts a company out of business. It's really hard to see a company that starts to have, bad safety. Now they've got bad bids. Now they're losing their good people because they can't keep them working. All these things kind of come together and ultimately is what kills a company. One bad bid isn't going to put Warren Roofing out of business, but one bad accident really could put the business out of business. Somewhat the obvious one, there's OSHA, right? So there's Big Brother out there. Citations, fines, monetary penalties for us not doing the right thing, for us ignoring what we know we should be doing in terms of safety. OSHA in the last few years has ramped up how they enforce safety in terms of monetary penalties. So for a long time, the penalties were stagnant. Well, now the penalties have caught up. They've reevaluated based on the GDP. A willful, serious would be like the worst case scenario, right? It's a serious violation, and willful meaning we did it on purpose type of a thing. That's a 6-figure fine now. A couple years ago, it was a fraction of that. So you go into a job and you see people cutting a hole in the deck and people working around it unprotected. That's it's fall protection, and it's willful. We know better. You know that we're not allowed to work around unprotected holes. So every time that occurs, every person that's exposed, that could be $100,000+ fine. We're working on some jobs right now where the Precision was cutting holes in the roof. There was about 30 guys on the roof. There was our roofers. We raised the red flag. No one else even recognized they were creating a hazard. And when we told the general contractor this could be a multi-million-dollar fine from OSHA, they were perplexed. They didn't understand it until we brought it to their attention. So unfortunately, a lot of times, some of these things fall onto us because, one, we're the professionals that we are. Two, that's why the clients are hiring us, because we bring that value to the equation. And three, they're not trained about fall protection and some of the hazards that we're exposed to the same way. Just like trenching. Do we really understand trenching the same way that an excavator would? No, because it's not what we do. Yeah, we have some general awareness. It's part of our safety manuals. I'm sure that we cover it at different parts of the OSHA 30 and the OSHA 10, but it's not the same focus as us as roofers that we're paying attention to. Does anyone have any questions? Okay. So the guys that have been at other safety meetings know we have a large group meeting and we have this small group format. Now at the large group, it's great. We get to bring in some industry professionals, some safety consultants. We have 150 people in the room, and we can bring in some high-powered, professional speakers. When we do this small format, we can't bring in the same powerful people because there's so many of these sessions. I think there's 9 of them this year. So we do have a drug-free session that you'll be able to see this afternoon that's videoed, one of those high-powered presentations. But the difference is with the small group, we're going to be able to have dialogue. You're going to be able to ask a question that you just can't ask in a group of 150 people and have this thing, flow and get out on time. We do want questions, so don't be shy. Raise your hand, ask a question. The other thing is, the questions that are brought up in each group are not always the same. So a question brought up in this session too, we may cover in future sessions just because it was a good point. We want to incorporate that into our presentation. But what we are going to do is Margaret's sitting in the back taking notes. So at the end of the day, she's collecting every question that's asked, and we're going to put out a mailer saying, hey guys, here were the different questions that were asked over all the sessions, and here's the response. Now most of these we're probably going to be able to answer right here, but we may not have time, we may not have the technical answer. Somebody may ask a question that requires some research or consulting with one of the safety professionals we work with. So at the end of the day, we want to give you the right answer, not just a quick answer. So expect to see that in the next couple weeks as we get through all these training sessions and have all the answers to the questions asked. So please ask questions. A little procedural. We're going to talk about a lot, but we're not going to talk about every one of these safety manuals, and we're not going to talk about them exhaustively. So these manuals, these are what our safety program is. These manuals are usually sitting here under the TV, but they're always available. So if you had a question, a concern, you weren't sure how to handle something, you always can review these. They're something that could be emailed to you. Our company, we have a condensed version of these too that usually are on the job in forms of electronic or even a booklet with the general contractor because they want a copy of our program. We don't send them, 1,000 pages of paper. We send them a reduced version of that. So if you ever had a question, a lot of this information is valuable. Of course, the internet's a powerful tool. It's easy to sometimes just Google, what's the answer to this OSHA, and it comes up. Dave and Margaret are really good about, doing that as well. So if you have questions, raise your hand. And I don't mean just now in this meeting, but if you're on the job and you feel like, gee, I don't know how to do this safely, or I'm not sure we're doing this the right way. Corey, the foreman in this room, may not have all the answers, may not be the guy seeing it, so maybe one of the other guys around him that's looking out for his coworkers that, we're doing the right thing and we're doing it all the time and evaluating the job. So every year we try to have a theme about safety. And what we found is so often on the job there's this reactiveness to safety as opposed to a proactive approach. And with most things in life, being proactive is a better way to be prepared and to go into a situation with the tools to be successful as opposed to reacting to things after they happen. So we want to try to create this idea of being proactive with safety and to be planning ahead. Now there's things that we need from the guys on the roof, in the field, and there's things that you need from the office prior to getting on the job, so all that is happening. So what we're implementing in 2017 is a pre-job hazard analysis. So one of our superintendents is going to analyze the job just prior to setting up. It's hard for us as sales guys, sometimes we may sell a job, like I have one right now that we're not going to start till next spring, not 17, but 18. So I can put everything together and get it ready, but by the time we get to the job, the complexion of what the job site looks like in terms of safety could be completely different. New construction is a good example too. I could go and look at it, today, and in a month it could look completely different as other trades get on site and the job evolves. So we're going to try to do this as close to us starting the job as we can, but still having time to communicate it. But so that checklist that we're going to develop is going to include a diagram. And the one thing I think the foreman would value is on setup day having a quick diagram, not pages of words that they may or may not have time to study on that first setup day. But where should the dumpster be? Where should we be parking? What are we putting flags versus barricades? That way the traffic can start to get directed. The safety, equipment, materials that we have deployed for this job in this proactive plan are easily communicated to everybody so the plan can be executed. Now, of course, we may think we're flagging off that area because that wall hasn't been built, and in the week since we've been out there, they built that wall, and that's when Corey or the foreman's going to have to do an audible and say, okay, we don't want to put flags up, we want to put the barricades up, and we'll have to adjust. But at least we're going out there with a plan, and it's not chaos, and again, we'll have to evolve. So that checklist is going to go to the PMs. The PMs will incorporate that into their pre-job work ticket, job hazard analysis. That'll be communicated to the foreman via the superintendents. It'll also get stored in the RTM. A lot of times, maybe a different foreman comes to the job, the paperwork doesn't necessarily get to the right guy on time, so we want that to be available electronically, so it's not just sitting in somebody's cab of their truck. Same thing if there's a question on the job, anyone in the office can pull that file up, see it, review it with you, and if there's questions, concerns, we can discuss those. So this is a big thing. I think often the guys in the field don't understand the support that they have here in the office. So when there's a problem, when there's an accident, a safety concern, a minimum of 3 people in the office are immediately engaged in that concern. Usually it's more like 6 or 7. So we just were doing a job, I kind of started describing it. We're on the job, we've already torn off the roof, temped it all in with a modified. The GC is getting skylights cut in, 18 skylights cut in, they're putting in new mechanical equipment, and we're just temping all this stuff in, and then in the spring we'll end up putting on the finished roof. So every once in a while they call us and say, hey, you got 2 more skylights to cut in. So we go on the job, and there's 30 people on the roof, there's open holes, there's no safety except the perimeter barricades we have set up, but everyone's exposed to a fall hazard through these openings in the deck. And the foreman rightfully was like, I can't control 3 other trades, the general contractor called the superintendent. Immediately the superintendent's on site. Dave, Margaret, myself are researching some of the technical questions that were being asked. How can we work around this? I can't control what they're doing. I'm going to bring it to the superintendent of the job's attention so he can get involved. But that guy has no idea. I mean, he's a laborer that doesn't really understand fall protection. So, you know, we're trying to communicate with him how we have to protect these holes, how we have to cover them. And oh yeah, by the way, these skylights that were delivered and we're putting lids on that were supposed to be OSHA compliant are not labeled as such. So now we're talking to the manufacturer, finding out, did they send the right skylights? Did they order the right skylights? What's on the job? Do we have to make lids to go over these skylights because they're a fall hazard? Or are they missing the sticker that they should have had on saying they meet the fall intention? So there's a half a dozen people in the office working behind, but none of that would have happened unless somebody raised their hand and said, I got a safety concern, I need help. I want you to know that the office is here to do that. And unless you raise your hand and ask for help, we don't always know that these things are going on. The superintendents, the safety people, we're not always on the job. We try to get around and visit the jobs, but the guys actually on the job every day have to be mindful of the changing environment and when, all right, I need backup. Or you know what, I can handle this, but I want to make sure I'm handling it the right way and protecting everyone. So if OSHA were to show up, they would just give us a thumbs up and say, you guys are doing an excellent job. So know that backup's here and know that it becomes the top priority of the office. Safety really is our most important concern, and you know, production, all these things are important, but safety really is what drives the company forward or will put us out of business. Any questions about that? Okay. So in the OSHA world, they have this term, I'm sorry, Corey.
All right, say you're on a job like that and the other trade is knowingly opening holes like that, and you're saying you're trying to figure out ways to work around that. Now you can't just, like, say you flagged off all the other people that were working. Could you get in trouble from OSHA, like, because you didn't report everything that you seen going on over there? You just secluded yourself from it?
So in that world, there's a control aspect. So just to repeat, you know, the question, we're working on other trades. What's our duty, not just to protect ourselves, but to protect them maybe as well from their own ignorance? It's all about control with OSHA. So if they were our subcontractor, we would have ultimate control, and yes, it would absolutely be on us. If we're in the normal environment where we're working for a general contractor, the general contractor is ultimately in control of the project. We're in control of us and our subs. So what I would say in that environment, you take a digital photo, email it to the PM and say, hey, can you let the general contractor know we have some concerns and we're worried about the people we're working around. Two things happen. Now they're on a written notice, right? They can't pretend like, oh, I had no idea that was going on. You know, well, no, we can prove you knew about it. We sent you a photo and voiced our concern. You would be amazed how quickly things change when somebody gets an email photo and we copy the safety director. We copy the right person up on the chain because that superintendent may not care. It may not be a priority to him because I've been doing this for 30 years. I know how to do my job, but you know, the owner of the company, the safety director, all these other people may go, whoa, 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 whoa. You know, safety really is something important to us. Why that guy's not championing it, you know, we need to be involved. So it comes to control. So now for protecting our people is flagging off that mechanical contractor who's cutting holes in the deck. So I've got flags around him, so we've demarcated the area of work. That's acceptable for us. Obviously, it's not okay for them. You know, those guys really need to be tied off, period. There's no flag and monitor, none of that's acceptable. And that's where I think a quick call to the office and, hey, here's the situation. And exact same situation came up and I wasn't sure, and I kind of misdirected the guys. Within about an hour of Dave and I discussing it, we realized, wait a minute, no, we can't do that. Called the guys in the field and said, hey, redirect, we need you to handle it this way, no problem. You know, and so they changed their tactic. Again, we want to be supporting you, and we may not have the right answer at the moment. Usually we do, but if we don't and we're not sure of ourselves, you know, we're calling CEA, we're calling NRCA, we're calling some of these safety professionals that we engage with on a regular basis and verifying, usually in writing, are we doing the right thing? And you know, they're pretty quick to get back to us. So, thank you. Good question. Any others? So, you know, kind of staying with OSHA, this term competent person comes up in OSHA's world. So OSHA, a lot of the safety videos you watch, they're going to talk about, well, who's the competent person on your job site, right? To be a competent person, it makes up 3 characteristics. You need to be trained, you need to be able to identify a hazard, and you need to be empowered to correct it. So in the OSHA world, they think there's one person on the job that has this ability. To us, this seems crazy. We want everybody to be a competent person. Now, the training we're doing today and that we do throughout the year with all the various aspects, that's the first element, right? Education. We're educating you about what we need to do and how we need to do it. Of course, there's that support part where we back up and support you in the office with answers when you have questions like Corey just did. But then there's the part where I have to actually employ that training. I need to be able to identify a hazard and recognize that this situation is not safe. So that's where, it varies. So, Trevor with 1 hour training may identify that hazard, but another individual may not, and that's where I say, we all have to be looking out for each other. But then the key component, and this is where OSHA, says, well, have you really empowered your people to make a change? And today I want you to understand that from me, the president of the company, everyone here is empowered to correct a hazard. If the foreman isn't addressing a hazard in the way you feel it needs to be, remove yourself from the situation. Call the office. Put some flags up around that hazard that we can't control, and at least barrier ourselves away from a hazard while we're trying to get an answer on how we can really move forward. We're just not going to go in that area until we have clear direction of how to handle it. We know we can't just flag it off and forget about it, but at least until we get a better answer, we get the general contractor and the mechanical guy to do the right thing, we can flag it off and eliminate it from a potential hazard from us. So everyone here is empowered. If you see something, we want you to address it. If it's not being addressed by your foreman, which would be very surprising to me, I want you to raise your hand and call me. You call the superintendent. You call the safety director. I guarantee the foreman is going to take it seriously, but if they don't, management absolutely will. So again, I have absolute confidence in our foreman. That's not the message here, to say otherwise. But sometimes the foreman's distracted. He's dealing with something else. And it may be something he just can't take the time at the moment to do, and he needs backup at the moment. So looking out for each other. At the end of the day, if the foreman is not seeing a hazard, but you're exposed to it, who's going to pay the personal price of the injury? Not necessarily the guy that is running the job, but the guy that's actually exposed to it. So understand that empowerment. It's real. You have it.